kind of what I wanted to talk about with you today, and
Sure.
also based on your conversations that you're having with educators and leaders all over the world, so many different perspectives that we can all pull from, but would love to hear um, maybe even just for this week, right? Because every day, every hour seems to change. Like, what's kind of the pull that you're feeling, or a big takeaway, mm, or a thought, like a provoking thought that you'd like to share with schools who might be listening to this or watching?
Well, I mean, so first of all, I may actually ask you if you don't mind. I mean, I may actually add this to our silver lining challenge stuff too,
Sure.
because I think this is important. I think right now what's really helped me as I talk with schools, because I have schools all over the place, from we can do this to really doesn't matter because no one, it's crickets out there, to I'm panicked, I'm freaked out. I mean, I've had it all. And obviously the schools that were a lot more technologically ready obviously are doing much better, where it's more than just having the technology but having the culture of having the technology, where teachers have discovered that lessons are not just assignments that you finish on your computer, but like how have they incorporated lessons that move learning at home, not just make sure that learning at home is just finishing assignments, but actually continuing learning at home. And I think that my son sitting next to me, and I love how like his teacher has been like, watch this video, like watch it alone, watch it with the group, reflect, right? You know, he's learning, you know, he's in a Spanish class watching movies, taking notes. So whereas my other son in the other room, it has teachers where they have, and I know, and I'm sorry if you're watching this, Rio's teachers, but your school definitely were not as prepared. So it just became like, here's a pile of work that should last a week. Um, so I think that the provocation that I have definitely learned from is not just from teachers, but like even my neighbors and everybody in other careers, is again, the question we all need to wake up and go to sleep thinking is, how do we get better? How do we come out of this better? This is definitely an opportunity for us to kind of really rethink things, even if we thought we were too busy to think about change. We need to do that. One of my favorite memes, I'm not usually a meme person. One of my favorite memes that I saw early on, somebody sent me and said, "Hey, Marco, we've been trying to change education for like 50 years." And then like the next part of the meme says, it's like coronavirus. It says, "Hold my beer, I'll be right back." And you know, it's like a month ago, we didn't even know what this really looked like, and now it's changed everything. I mean, but I think this is a really good question, Kim, is how do we get out of this better?
Yeah.
And
And what steps do we take now, tomorrow, next week, next month? And that's the conversation that I'm having more and more now with um, schools, is like, how do we step out of the immediate response mode,
yeah,
which was just necessity at the beginning,
right.
right? Like, we had no idea.
Survival, reaction.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like survival mode. Like, we've got to protect and, make sure
Yep.
everyone's safe first and foremost. And then how do we navigate all the flow of information coming from all directions and make sure that staff, students, families, everyone gets the information they need at the right time? So I know so much of it was just managing the immediate response to things. And there's still a lot of that because there's so many unknowns still. But I feel like we're now moving into that. The big question that I keep hearing is, okay, how do we stop planning for right now, or even the next couple of weeks? And how do we start breaking things down a little bit more and looking to rebuild it in a bigger, more meaningful way
Yeah.
for longer term? And I think that's where I was really excited to be able to talk to you about this. And I know this is way bigger than just a short Zoom conversation, but maybe we can pull out a couple of little nuggets within that, and to highlight some specific ideas or case studies or little tips that are like tangible that people can take with them as they're watching this. So I think that's what people are looking for. They're like, how can I help my teachers transition more smoothly to this online learning? How can
Yeah.
I help my families and students create structures and systems for themselves that actually work and and that can be flexible within their lives now?
Yeah.
um so there's all these questions, but how can we give some more tangible
Yeah.
tips?
Well, I think number one, we need to be asking those questions. So I think that schools that are just trying to get answers right now probably are in a wrong position. I think we need to ask questions right now. And I think those questions you just asked right now, those are great guiding questions that we need to be asking. So number one, there should be a process at the school. So if I were to have a tip, I would definitely have like a central location for questions, and then have a small group of teachers or leaders or anyone that can help categorize these questions, because we have to, right now everybody is bombarding with stuff that's available. So what does the next step after collecting is curation? Like, how do you curate? And then after you curate, what happens is that you identify holes. You automatically create a gap analysis of what is like, what do we know, what do we need to know. And I think at that point you can start to fill in some of those holes, like, what do we know about those specific holes that are popping up. And then you could do at that point is cultivate information that you're already having. So in other words, get a little bit of this, get a little bit of this to fill this hole. Or better yet, sorry, that's my son's arm in the shot.
Real life right now, I know.
No, it is perfectly cool. The other thing too is it allows us to figure out what do we need to create. And I think that that's where we can focus on best practice. And I think that's what I've been focusing on at work, because I'm seeing, Kim, even at my work, everybody wants to come up with solutions for people. And I'm like, we just got hit by something that we don't even know what it is still. That's
We don't know what's happening. We don't
the
understand it.
actual, the word like COVID actually translates to like, we don't know what this is. Like, we need more questions. So we can't really come up with answers if we don't even know what questions that we're doing. I'm hoping that if we can cultivate, curate, curate, cultivate, create from the holes that we're seeing. There are people out there, and I think you and I, when you were at Digital Promise, we always talked about needs and concerns as one category. We talked about lessons learned as another category, and victories as another category. And the more we can get people to document and share what that looks like, the more we can get people who have a need and concern to say it out loud, so that someone else can see, hey, that was my need and concern. However, I did this, and this is what I learned dealing with that. So because of somebody's need and concern is somebody's lessons learned, and then someone's lessons learned is someone's victory. And I think that this is where communities are really important, like learning communities, because I don't care if you're in education or in photography or in gardening, you're always going to learn from someone. And because they're documenting lessons learned, needs and concerns, and victories. So I think that if I'm a leader, I want to make sure that I can create a common language so that I can help my curators organize, categorize, collapse these kinds of concepts, because or else it's just a free for all right now. So we have to figure out what are those guiding categories that we need to create.
I
That's
think
what I
that's
would
a
do.
great tip also, because that's another thing that I hear and I'm hearing and I'm also experiencing, I think we all are, is just the deluge of resources. And
Yeah,
I mean, people are stepping up left and right, and it's amazing to watch, but it's also totally overwhelming to
it
be
is.
receiving all of these things and not knowing, what to pay attention to, which one, or even having
Right.
time to tune in, right, and make the most of that time. So I think I love the tip of creating those, that common language. And I guess a follow-up question to that would be, how would you, what guidance would you give to a leader if they didn't think, oh right, I can do that, and then just, if it wasn't obvious to them how to even start that process of creating those themes, categories, and helping their teams curate and in using that common language, how would you get them to
Yeah.
start that process?
Well, I mean, number one, I would probably, because of the technology that needs to be involved, I would probably reach out to my staff and try to find who recognizes this is what we have to do. Number one. So you need someone that's got the attitude. They don't have to know the technical side of it. Um, and then identify people in their network or in their community that can help create a shared repository, a strategic shared repository where we can start to address some of those concerns. I'll give you an example. Um, uh, I don't know, let me see how to say it. A big company reached out to me and said, we want to help Los Angeles with homeless families because we found out the number of kids that are homeless in Los Angeles Unified School District. So immediately I just reached out to the mayor's office. I knew someone there. And when I talked to the director of the emergency services, that's one of the things that he wanted to do right away. And I'm very grateful that I had a chance to work with that team. Like, what are, if we're going to get all this resources, where's the best place to send it? And they recognize that we need to create categories.
Mm.
And so they created categories, and then they try to figure out who can collect information from those different categories, and then that created a level of need from like a score from 1 to 5, 5 being the most, 1 being the least, so that they can be strategic. So what I loved is they created a process of, number one, where can we create a repository that's accessible to key people. How do we communicate to our networks to make sure that they can contribute their questions to it? And then how do we create a curating process? So what they did is they had like a group that did the technical feed. They had another group that curated and then obviously prioritized. And then they had another group that can then get in there and provide solution concepts, because obviously you don't know. In this case, it was money. So I mean, I would do that. So like if I'm a principal at a school, um, I definitely want to figure out who's my team. And I realize that I don't have to just rely on my assistant principals. This is when I need to rely on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who knows the technology well? Who can help? Who are my stress reducers on my team? And then how do I start to build a place where we can collect this information? Because if we don't have a place to collect information, it's going to be tough.
It's just swirling in the atmosphere, and I think that's what a lot of people feel overwhelmed by right now, is that it feels like we're all just sort of swirling, trying to find our footing
Yeah.
again. And that's, so I like the idea of creating that structure,
Yeah.
some sort of structure amidst the chaos, and then also a process to follow so that people who are engaged in the process have, understand their part of the process and understand the purpose of that process. And then that is also allowing them to be more responsive and
Yeah.
connected to their communities, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's the whole goal now, because we aren't connected in our normal ways. The other thing that
I,
I thought of is what I would,
communication should be a big, just to sorry to interrupt, Kim,
that's
but
okay.
this is informal. I definitely would put communication as a critical part of the big ideas that we need to do, because I know that I've been able to reach out to KLCS, PBS, just to provide information for parents that don't have internet. And
Mm-hmm.
so, having the mayor's office reach out to the community and saying, hey, for more information, parents, you can go to pbs.org, or you can go to KLCS, which is a local
Mm-hmm.
station for LA, for information on what you can do with kids at home if you don't have technology. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's a big question. Like, one thing that came up the other day is like, forget iPads for kids. They need headphones because there's like multiple families in a house.
Distraction, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's a huge issue. Like, there's not even a quiet place for kids to react. I mean, my kids are lucky. He's got headphones on over here. In fact, I'm gonna turn it around here a little bit. If you
Yep.
see, he's got headphones on, so he has no idea, because I've been on calls all day. My other son is more easily distracted, so he's in the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing these things, and So like for me, reaching out to other companies and saying, hey, can you guys donate headphones to
Right.
Los Angeles? Then I had to
Well,
call Los Angeles, like where to donate them.
well, and I think that's what you're talking about too, that um, the idea of communication obviously being like critical right now in all ways, but the best way to communicate effectively and with the most accurate, up-to-date information is to have a repository, like you said, of both the questions that are coming in, the themes and categories that are resulting from that, or flip that, your
Yeah,
categories and
yeah,
how you're kind of curating those questions that are coming in, so you can start to notice themes and address those questions and those themes in a way that's thoughtful, and you can inform in a yeah, in a more thoughtful way. And that's a lot of what I talk about and what
yeah,
I'm supporting folks with. But what I wanted to also talk to you about today, and we won't spend like, because we could talk for hours. Those listening probably don't realize that, but we could just, yeah, we could yap for hours, but we won't today. We'll try to get to the point. um, One thing that I love, I call you the master storyteller or the director of story, whatever your current title is, but there's such power in the work that you do, not only getting people to understand the process of storytelling, but
yeah.
what we already talked about, which is asking the important questions and filtering and getting to the essential, um, um, getting to the solutions by means of asking the right questions, right?
Right, right.
And in doing that, we can also start to document our processes and our experiences and what we're learning along the way, which you talked about earlier. But we're capturing them in different formats, right? I think
Right.
a lot of what we've worked on together in the past is capturing through video. And I know that's becoming more and more powerful now because we
Yeah,
have no other
now,
I mean, now, if anyone ever questioned the power of video, I think they all understand now, right?
yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the storytelling aspect of what you do and how that is playing out right now, or how you see it playing out, or how you envision it playing out in supporting schools and families in this new environment that we're living in.
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are people who are going to be watching this can tell you about a story or six that they've seen in the last 2 weeks that is very hopeful on how people are taking this difficult situation, how they're being creative. I think creativity is a wonderful big idea right now because there are a lot of examples on what people are doing with what they have available to them at this moment. Whether you're I love my son's a musician, so we've been looking at videos of what these famous musicians are now doing online, for people. um, and that's really rewarding, that they want to share. Or like me, I'm obsessed with cooking, what chefs are doing with their family members. Like they don't have access to their crews, they have access to their family members. You have the late night shows, talk shows that I like to watch being filmed in their own homes. So you're absolutely right. I think the power of stories, what they do is they give people hope. They make people empathize. Um, because of a story that came out of a local restaurant that was trying to figure out how to survive this, they started to sell their inventory. And what happened, this is here in San Fernando, and like their eggs, their flour, and you could like Venmo them, and they just come in and it has your name on it. And you just pick it up and go. Uh, and then other farmers started to reach out because they started to close down farmers markets. They started to reach out to restaurants and, can we sell it through you? And so you have like breweries and restaurants here in this neighborhood, butcher shops that are selling it. And because of those stories that are coming out, they're forcing people to ask new questions. And I think that what stories do, and Kim, you and I have known this because we've lived it. What stories do is they make people believe, they make people have hope, they make people realize that I have questions that I hadn't thought about. And that's what stories do, because it's more than just a report or a reporting process of what's happening, but like, what does learning look like? And if you think about any of the movies or any stories or any TV show or any documentary, what excites you the most is watching people learn, watching people figure things out.
Mhm.
And I think the more you can document that, the more you can bring that out to the open, the more you're going to learn. I'm hoping that how do we come out of this better, is people realize that stories is really what kept us
Mhm.
going every day,
Mhm.
not reports. of the
Well, and I
coronavirus.
love that too because it's not only an opportunity to learn and to dig deeper for those actually documenting and sharing their stories, because it's asking you to think differently. Well, you're reflecting on your own experience in a deeper way by sharing your story, right? So it's for the person or the group that's actually documenting, but then the power that that has in sharing it and getting it out there, having a place to share it where others can actually learn and grow from that. I mean, that's the ultimate that we hope for. It's just creating the space and the mindset around what that looks like and why it's important. Because to some people, it might be like, oh, of course I'll do that. That sounds wonderful. They're already in that mindset, or they think in story,
Yeah,
and they're willing to document and feel comfortable documenting through
right.
video. But then there's so many others who were like, wait, what? You want me to do what? Like literally. I mean, it's
I
like,
know.
so
I know.
so maybe one of the last, we can wrap it up in a couple more questions. I think the next question would be, the follow on to that would be, what would and you probably have a million blog posts or worksheets that you could share, and I can add to the blog post that I'll put this video in. But what would like a simple step by step, just to like get people started thinking about documenting their stories, and maybe that goes to the story framework and
Yeah,
how, that simple outline that I could share,
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
That
That's
would
good.
be nice to share with the group. So could you walk through that just quickly in a simple
Yeah.
way?
So you mentioned like the story framework, which is something, a story formula was something that I use with a lot of groups that I work with. And for me, real simply, it's in three parts, and I know it's hard to do this right now, but Kim, I'll send it to you, or you probably have this that you can share with people where it's a little bit more of a write-up. But number one, what is the story you want to tell? Be very clear on what it is. So for example, I'm doing a story today on creativity at home. And what is that? So just explaining, creativity, and I actually define it in my little video, then my write-up that I'm doing. The second part is the for example section. And the for example section is, um, I split it up in four parts, this little set where it's like, can you come up with four examples of what creativity looks like at home? So if I'm doing a profile, I'm going to talk about musicians. I'm going to talk about cooking. I'm going to talk about um, what they call personal like creativity challenges, where artists are saying, draw like today, draw a jester. Today is April Fool's Day, and you have a famous artist like the guy who does one of those I don't know morning cartoons. I forgot his name, but like Captain Underpants. He's like
Oh, I
today
saw that. Yeah.
you're
Uh-huh.
drawing a jester today, and then maybe a cooking something. Somebody's saying you need to make bread without yeast because you can't find it in stores. So those are four examples on what creativity is. And then on the last box or the last section is, why is it important to me? What are the benefits of this, or the why part? Um, and if you could just fill that in writing, you could turn that into a video. You can turn that into a written reflection. You can turn that into a song. I saw it recently. You can turn it into whatever form of media that you want to do. And I think that the other thing too, as a tip, is take this time to look at what teachers are, I mean, sorry, not teachers, what artists are doing online. Like if I'm a teacher, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of overload of stuff that you can use, but what you don't see is how teachers are using it.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be great if you could start to steal some ideas from what we're seeing online on how you can share your learning online, and try the story formula to help you organize your thoughts around it. And you can use your hands. Like I just showed these teachers in Atlanta because they're like, I don't want to be a YouTuber. Fine. My favorite YouTuber, his name is Chef John. He has a show called Food Wishes where he only uses his hands. Like I'll draw stuff and I'll record what I'm drawing, but while I'm talking. So, there are other ways. But if you have the structure in place, it's going to help. So the story formula is three boxes that I use to help me visualize the journey of a story. Part one, the what. Part two, the for example. Part three, the benefits or the why.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's for those of us who are visual, I know that includes me. It'll be helpful to have the attachment on the blog, which I'll have included here as well.
Yeah,
Um, but just to have you talk through it is really helpful because it's once you learn it, it is really simple, but it does take
yeah,
a, again, I keep saying a shift in mindset, but it's a simple shift, but it's an important one. I think what better time than now
it
than
is.
you practice it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we all need to be map makers today. You know, I always talk about that. Explorers are great, but explorers with a map maker are amazing
Mm,
because, and we need to realize that as educators, um, you know, for every reason that is true, we're not good at reflecting as a tool. Reflecting as a task, we see it, but not reflecting as a tool for assessing and adjusting. And I think that if there's ever a time to reflect at every moment, it's now. And if we have a story formula that can help us at least organize our thoughts, like what did I learn today? What are examples of what I learned today? And
mhm.
why is it important to me? And why I think it's important to you? Just like you said, once you get that mindset, then you can create a framework. And once you create the framework, then you can create activities and habits that can support that. And the more others can benefit from it, because there'll be a clear common language.
Right. And that kind of circles back to what you'd originally said about how to even set up that repository and creating common language. So then it's, full circle creating these
Yeah.
reflections and this content that helps to serve as support and evidence, as you say often, to answer those questions that keep coming in from the community. And I
Yeah.
think that is what we're all going to be seeking more and more because right now it's a lot of idea sharing and resource overload, like I said, um, but being more intentional and charting a course by way of this evidence that we're creating every day, whether we recognize it or not, I think is a really wonderful, really important tip right now. So, um, I guess the other thing I would include in the post, if you have it, and I'll check with you after we wrap up here, but if there's any examples of this already that you've seen or that you've helped or people have documented and you're already kind of pulling those together, maybe on that silver lining challenge.org, I can reference that site in the post as well, and people
Yeah,
can see some examples that others around the
absolutely.
country, around the world are doing.
Yeah, and I think that we're building it as we, like you're saying, we're still in that kind of reactionary stage. So I'm still on the kind of like, hey, let's stay in the question. Let's ask, what do we know? What do we need to know? And that's why you'll start seeing me posting things around those big ideas.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that again, our essential question for us is how do we come out of this better? Not just how to survive the now, because I think we will. I don't think the apocalypse is here just yet. We will survive this, but we better yet, we have to become better
Hmm.
because of this.
Well, I am so happy to see you because I can't see you in person right now, but
But
Marco Torres, my brother, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and with us, for those of you listening or watching. And I'll continue adding to this post as we move forward. And I'm really happy really happy to have you here today. So thank you.
all right, Kim.